Hey everyone. So what we're going to go through today is we're going to talk about something that's really common to a lot of people, and that's back pain. One of the main things that we see with back pain is that it doesn't really matter what kind of back pain you have, whether it's a disc or a joint or there's a muscular issue or it's a chronic pain. It doesn't matter what it is, but one of the common themes throughout all of this is that the position you put it in matters. So if you are sitting down a lot, if you're sitting on the couch and you slouch or you get into a bad position, that hinge that you create in your spine tends to increase the load going through that area. So instead of your spine being straight and the load being distributed evenly, we often kick a hinge into that spot, and over time that gets stiff and tight. So some of the exercises that we'll touch on in a second, you'll probably find that if you were to set up nice and tall and then let yourself go, wherever that hinge might be is generally where you might find the most stiffness and tightness and tenderness. And for a lot of people, it's actually the centerpiece of where your pain might be coming from. Even if you feel your pain down a bit lower, it goes into your hips, down into your legs, you might find that that hinge point is a very crucial part in trying to correct your back in general. So one of the important things to do is, if you're not paying attention to where your spine's positioned, it's very easy to default into a bad shape. So if you are sitting down a little bit more, whether it's the couch, you're working from home, sitting at a desk, driving a lot, it's really helpful to roll up a towel or a cushion and fill that gap, fill that space with something other than your back. So if you do sink into the couch, do sink into a chair, you have something to block you there and hold you there. Now obviously sitting in general isn't the best thing for us, but if you do have to sit or you want to sit, just try and make sure that your spine's in the best position possible, because when you are trying to free it up, get it stronger, help it function better, you don't want to undo all of that hard work just by being in a bad shape for a couple of hours at a time. So that's the first step. The second thing is, if you have just a ball lying around at home, this is a lacrosse ball, you can use a tennis ball, you can use a baseball, you can use anything that has a density and a shape that you feel comfortable with. But a lacrosse ball is quite good because it's quite dense, but it's got some give to it as well. But if you have pain, it might be easier to start with a tennis ball. So as we said before, there's very likely going to be a part of your back or a level of your back that is a bit stiff, a bit tender, and possibly tight. And we can get at that with the ball quite easily. So the first thing you want to do is with the ball, you want to place the ball into your spine, just either side. So if you've got the bones running down the middle, you want to place it just up against it on either side. And then you want to either lie down on the ball if you feel comfortable, or you can do it up against the wall, standing or sitting. So the key with this exercise is that you want to start on one side and then just move the ball up and down slowly. Look for areas that feel stiff, tight, or tender. Generally, we want to focus more on the stiffness. So if you find that on your left-hand side, you just slowly work the ball up and you find something that feels tender, but then if you go across to the same spot on the other side and it feels stiff and it feels more restricted, this is the side that you actually want to spend your time on. What we don't realize a lot with back pain is that the pain itself is often the consequence of something in that area not functioning well, and that area that isn't functioning well is often characterized by stiffness, potentially that same stiffness that we find by being in a bad position. So if you have an area that's really sore, you probably don't have to be digging into that area unless you feel like it's actually stiffer and tighter than the other side. So to review, the key with this exercise is that you want to find a spot on either side that feels stiff or tight and just stay there. Just lie on the ball, let the ball press into your back for 30 seconds, a minute, whatever you feel comfortable with. Once you feel like you've done something, then just slowly move the ball up and down, go looking and hunting for the next spot. So for most people, they'll be, or you and I will be stiff and tight on the same side for a number of joints. So you might find that from the base of your spine up into the middle of your back, that mid-thoracic level, you might be stiff on, say, the left-hand side, and then you might find that it actually changes and then goes up on a different side, and then it gets to your neck and it can be different again. The reason why that happens is it's often a consequence of us being asymmetrical. So if you're sitting down at a computer, you often twist one way, something else has to twist back to correct. And then if we're in that position for a while, we just get this pattern of accrued stiffness that you can get at with a lacrosse ball. Now, if you want a different approach, you can do the same thing with a foam roller. But the key is that when you lie on top of it, we don't want to roll backwards and forwards. We want to get that constant pressure on the joints. So for you, if you found that you were stiffer on the left-hand side, you actually want to lie on the roller, stay there, and just angle yourself a little bit more to the left so that you feel like you're biasing that stiffness. Again, once you feel like you've made an impact, then move the roller up a little bit higher, and then do the same thing again. And if you can accumulate a few minutes, if you're watching a good movie or a TV show, you could spend half an hour or 45 minutes systematically working up and down either side of your spine, spending time on the spots that you feel are the most important. And then what you should find is that when you stand up again, you should feel looser and freer. Now, one of the things that gets missed a lot with either of these approaches is that you want to make sure that you can breathe. So if you feel like you're hitting a spot and it's quite tender, and you're only there because it also feels stiff and restricted, it's important that you can breathe. If you're not taking 3 or 4 deep breaths, it means that you don't have control of that position just yet. So it's important to make sure that you're just breathing calmly and confidently. The more you can focus on your breathing, the less your nervous system will freak out. Some people have the capacity to feel a little bit tender afterwards. It's not because it's a bad exercise, it's more so because they've essentially been threatening their nervous system for 5, 10, 15 minutes. But if you're breathing calmly, you can bypass all of that, and it can just be a comfortable, really powerful exercise to improve the mobility of the joints in your spine. Again, that probably relate to the positions that you find yourself in day to day. Now, from a mobility perspective, as simple as that exercise is, it's one of the easiest ways to get your back moving better. One left of center idea that often helps is that we can also do some hip stretching. And there's a really powerful hip stretch called the couch stretch. And what that does is the muscles at the front of your hip, when we sit a lot at 90 degrees, the fronts of those hips often get tight and stiff purely because they're just stuck in the same shape for hours on end. And again, what often gets missed with this is that those hip flexors, the muscles at the front of your hip, they attach from the front of your leg and they attach into your spine at the front. So often we get this pattern where the front of the hip gets tight, and it's also creating this constant pull on the front of the spine. So if we can free up the spine from the back and then take away some of the anchors at the front, then we have a spine that can feel a lot more functionally correct. It can move really well, and your nervous system's not constantly sort of threatened by this constant presence of stiffness. And what we find a lot is that when you can do this couch stretch, not only does it open up your hips, but it takes a lot of the pressure off of your lower back. So if you do have some aches and pains there, it's a nice way to improve the function of your back without actually touching your back. So what is the couch stretch? It can be a brutal stretch, but the idea is that you have a chair or a couch, hence the name. But for the purposes of this, you can do it on the floor. It is a little bit harder, but the key is that if you can imagine that the back of the chair is here and this is the seat, you want to have your knee right into the back corner of the chair, and you want to start relatively horizontal, keeping your back straight. We then want to come up as high as you feel comfortable without arching your back, without letting your hips twist. For a lot of people who haven't done this before, you'll feel a real strong, powerful sensation of tightness at the front of your thigh, the front of your hips. You may not get fully upright. It doesn't matter. You just want to come up to the point where you feel comfortable, and you want to hang out here for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes if you can. And while you're doing that, as we said before with the back stretch, make sure that you feel like you can breathe. Again, if you can't breathe and you don't own this position, it's a struggle for your body. It shouldn't be a struggle. So sacrifice a little bit of the height, come down a little bit, find a position that you feel relatively comfortable in. Make sure you're breathing. And every so often what I'll get you to do is take a deep breath in and squeeze. So squeeze your hips, squeeze your glutes, tense everything in the area for 5 seconds, and then breathe out, and then relax. What you'll find is you should be able to then come up a little bit further into the stretch now that your nervous system's a bit more relaxed, and also some of that soft tissue will have given, allowing you to come up further. So again, when you do this on a chair, it will look a little bit different because you'll be elevated with your foot on the ground. It will be easier to get into this position. So if you find that on a chair this is too easy, hop onto the ground, do it into this position, and you'll find pretty much straight away that it becomes a lot tighter and a lot harder. Now, normal human movement dictates that everyone, regardless of age and fitness, should be able to get into this position on the floor because it's just an expression of full ankle, knee, and hip range of motion. So if you can't do this, or you're very far away from this, then you've actually found something that you can work on. That can really help the function of your back, because if your hips are stiff, if your knees are stiff, if your back is stiff, then there's three really simple things that are probably compromising the health and function of your back. So if you can work on those, it creates a much nicer environment for your back to function in. Again, being stuck in that position for a while, it is impacted by the shape of your spine as well. So if you can stay in a better position and try and decrease the amount of sitting that you do throughout the day, both the back and the hip just won't keep getting stiff. So if you can nail these positions, if you can free them up and feel like things are improving, they shouldn't keep coming back and keep becoming stiff because you're putting them in a better position more often. So again, the main principles we want to focus on through this with a lot of back issues, again, it doesn't matter what issue you have with your back, normal function is still normal function, and we want to strive, if someone's over here or if someone's over here, and normal function's in here, both people have deviated and ended up with back pain, but we need to get everyone back to the similar state with the same ideas to help that pain go away and hopefully not come back again. So part of that umbrella is making sure that you position your back in a nice way, that your back is loose, so it's free, your hips are also free, and the third thing that we want to touch on, apart from mobility and positioning, is strength. And one of the most simple ways to strengthen your back is with a plank. So everyone's probably seen this before. So it's kind of a push-up position. So you can do it on your hands, you can do it on your elbows. The key is that you don't want your bottom to lift up, you don't want it to dip down. You want to try and be as straight as you possibly can, squeezing those glutes. If this is too hard, you can drop your knees down. You can have your hands out further. However you feel you want to do this. The point is that you feel like you can find a position that is a challenge, but that you can hold for about 30 seconds. The regular plank, where you're out straight on your elbows, most adults should be able to get to 60 seconds pretty comfortably. So again, doesn't matter if you can't, but if you can't do it, it's a good lesson that perhaps that's one of the reasons why your back is a little bit sorer than it should be. So if you can work on doing 3 sets of 30-second holds and just keep working up towards a minute as you feel comfortable, change the position so that you feel like either your knees are on the ground, your knees are up, you're on your hands, you're on your elbows. The key point is that you feel like your back is straight the whole time. We want to challenge those core muscles to maintain a better position. Again, tying this in together, if you're in a good position, your back is straight, your core muscles are working. If you do sink into a bad shape, it deactivates them pretty much completely. So you're just relying and hanging off of the passive structures in your spine, which again is why they get stiff and tight. So this position is really important, because if you do create that hinge, we accrue stiffness and tightness, but the muscles around that just aren't being used, so they just start to switch off. So that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people need to do core strength, not because they have a sore back, but because they've lost normal function, which has also led them to a sore back. So to reiterate, use a ball to free up your spine, do the couch stretch to free up your hips. It's quite a good stretch. Make sure that you're doing some core strength exercises where you're challenging your ability to keep your back straight, most likely via a plank. But the main thing is the choices that you make day to day, when you're watching TV, when you're driving somewhere, when you're working, if you're not in a good position, it's very, very hard for your spine to function normally. So if you're working really hard on all these exercises to improve the function of your spine, you don't want to then undo it for another 15 hours a day, and as I said, undo all the hard work that you've been putting in. So there's 4 sort of really simple things to look for most back issues. They're all very safe, they're all very appropriate for almost anyone. So give them a go. Let us know how you went. If you have any questions, just let us know in the comments below. And yeah, we'll do a few of these based on the questions that a lot of people have been asking. So if you have some more, please let us know. We want to make sure that you're having your questions answered and you're getting a good understanding of what you're going through. So until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.